Hi, everyone. It's time for the weekly webinar again, Thursday, April 24th. Welcome. Glad to have you all here. Looks like everyone is muted. So thank you for that. I pressed the record button, so this will be available later. And like all of our webinars, I think there's great value. And I think this one is especially going to be interesting to keep in your file for current and future use. So we'll get started here in just a moment. So we're recording. Please use the closed caption feature if you have questions or comments for Rosie today. And I believe those are all of the housekeeping notes. So I'm very excited to have Rosie Pasqualini be our speaker today. She is someone who is familiar to a lot of you from our LEAP programming and from the weekly webinar and just around the ABRC in general. And it's always a treat to have Rosie come and share some information with us. So you know Rosie from LEAP, and she's got a background in cognitive science and nonprofit outreach. And along with Rachel Sandoval, who a lot of you also know, Rosie makes sure we take our research and transform that into actionable strategies that will empower participants to support their brain health. And so today we'll hear specifically about spring cleaning and how sleep can help us rid our brain of toxins. And as a champion napper, I am excited to think that my napping is not just an escape from the real world, but also might be beneficial. So Rosie, not to tell you what to say or anything, but wink, wink. So I will turn it over to Rosie with my great thanks for your being here, Rosie.
Thanks so much, Kelly G. And yes, I am also a prolific napper, so this is near and dear to my heart as well. Let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so as Kelly G mentioned, today we'll be talking about how sleep clears toxins from the brain. You may think it's a little late for spring cleaning, but it is still spring, and as a slightly messy person, I always like learning about new cleaning systems and ways to stay tidy, especially if it applies to my own brain. So we'll be talking about a pretty cool, unique mechanism that applies to you as well, and how we can support that to support brain health. As Kelly G mentioned, please go ahead and put questions or thoughts in the chat. I'd be happy to answer them at the end of our presentation. So, a little background on how the body in general produces waste. Because our body uses energy in so many different ways, it also produces a lot of different types of waste as a byproduct of that energy usage. So some ways that your body uses energy every day might include walking and running, stretching or moving around, so being physically active, repairing our muscles after strain, pumping blood through the body, and fighting off viruses and bacteria. These are all just a few ways that we use energy in our everyday lives. All of these processes produce waste. And what waste is it is any substance that's created in the body that is no longer useful. So one example would be we inhale oxygen, we exhale carbon dioxide as a byproduct of our respiration, but that carbon dioxide is not useful to the body. Another example might be lactic acid from muscles. If you work your muscles really hard during exercise, you produce lactic acid, which is just a product of that process that then has no additional use. And one last example would just be damaged parts of cells. So our cells work really hard every day. Sometimes they will perish, sometimes parts of them struggle, and the body is often good at clearing out those parts of cells. Those are just some examples of the waste products that we produce every day. And just for a little more context about waste, several systems help to clear waste from the body. Here are just some examples. Of course, we have our digestive system, which clears waste from our gut and our intestines. Excuse me, I'm getting a weird pop-up. Sorry, just a second. Our circulatory system, which helps to transport different types of waste into key organs for removal. So one example of this is the compound urea, which is produced when we break down protein. So every time you eat protein and are synthesizing it to build new muscles, your body is producing a waste product called urea. And through our circulatory system, this urea is transferred from the liver into the kidneys to then be excreted through our urine. So that's one example of how our circulatory system takes out the trash. Last but not least, another related system is our lymphatic system, which helps to filter out dead cells and bacteria from our organs. It's also very important for our immune health. So these are just some examples of systems in your body that help clear out waste every single day. So brain waste is kind of unique. These systems that I mentioned and many others are typically very effective at clearing waste from different parts of the body. But what about the brain? When it comes to the brain taking out the trash, it's quite different from other organs. For one, we have something known as the blood-brain barrier. The brain is a very sensitive organ, so it's quite picky about what both gets in and gets out through the bloodstream. This might make it harder for the brain to get rid of certain waste products by using the bloodstream. In addition, I touched on how the lymphatic system is important for clearing waste, but actually the lymphatic system doesn't extend to the brain. And so here's a graphic for you. This just has a bunch of different lymph nodes with all of their fancy names. But as you can see, if you look at this person's head, those lymph nodes really are not extending into the brain at all. So there's some limits to how the lymph system can clear waste in the brain. So how is brain waste cleared? The brain does produce waste every single day, like our other parts of our bodies. And some of the key kind of players in this waste are leftover neurotransmitters. Those are brain signaling molecules that our brain uses to communicate messages throughout the brain and the body. Neurotransmitters are very important. But for example, if you have an excess of a neurotransmitter called glutamate, that can actually be toxic to the body. So our brain has these fine-tuned systems to keep the right amount of neurotransmitters and get rid of neurotransmitters that would be harmful in those larger quantities. In addition to that, the brain produces leftover or damaged proteins from different processes, and this does include proteins like amyloid and tau, which are implicated in Alzheimer's disease and other dementias. So we'll talk about that in a couple minutes more specifically. It turns out that the brain has a special mechanism of clearing this waste. Brain waste is cleared out through our cerebrospinal fluid, our CSF. That's a type of fluid that is around the brain going through the spine. And this is kind of humorously described as brainwashing, and it was discovered in approximately 2013. Here's a little more info about how brainwashing works. I want to add the disclaimer that I am certainly not an expert in this process, and it is quite complicated. But I think this is kind of a sufficient summary that will help you understand what is going on when the brain is clearing waste. So first of all, our cerebrospinal fluid enters the brain. It is flowing around the brain. You can see to the right, that is an MRI of a brain where the cerebrospinal fluid is highlighted in that lighter and darker blue. And what the CSF does is that it's able to wash through these small open spaces, these special spaces that surround our brain arteries. These spaces are similar to lymph passages, but they are not the same thing. They're kind of specifically for this clearance. And by going through those spaces, this allows the CSF to more fully filter into the brain itself. And I think this is the coolest part. It's still being researched, but the gist is that, at least according to a lot of researchers, our brain cells fire. They give off electrical signals, which physically helps push and flush the CSF through the brain. Specifically during slow wave sleep, it appears that we have brain cells that are firing together in these special, specific patterns. And these patterns of electrical activity move the CSF through the brain cells and then flush the CSF out. And this allows that cerebrospinal fluid to collect any toxins or waste products that have built up. And the CSF will eventually leave the body through other waste systems, including through our urine. And there you can just see this is not a real image, but it's an artist's rendering of brain cells firing all together. Why does this matter? It may not surprise you to hear that effective brain waste clearance is linked to better brain health. So you may have heard that amyloid beta and tau are two types of proteins that are often involved, definitely involved in Alzheimer's disease, but also sometimes involved in other types of dementia and cognitive decline. These are actually important for brain function, but both amyloid and tau can misfold and build up in the brain, which makes it more difficult for our brain cells to communicate with each other. And that's kind of one reason why they may lead to cognitive decline. So while this brainwashing process, as far as I know, cannot get rid of proteins that have already built up, it is really important for flushing out amyloid B and tau, as well as other toxins, before they have that chance to sometimes misfold and start building up in the brain. One other point here is just that inflammation is often involved in different types of cognitive decline and dementia. This is a very complex topic, but flushing out just other toxins and waste products help to manage that inflammation and support brain health by that way as well. So this process is happening all the time, and I think that's pretty cool. It happens throughout the day, just when you're going about your life. Your brain is working really hard to get rid of those toxins. However, the vast majority of this cleanup appears to happen during sleep, specifically during that slow wave sleep phase that I mentioned. That is going to be our deepest stage of sleep. And it's also really important for other functions like muscle repair, because your body is fully relaxed at that time. So poor sleep in general may impact the brain's ability to clear toxins. And this could be one reason why sleep difficulties are sometimes linked to cognitive decline. So this was just one study that I found. The first part of that title is what's important. They were looking at the effects of sleep on glymphatic functioning. Glymphatic is another word used to refer to that brainwashing because it's a play on lymph, since the system is similar to our lymphatic system, but slightly different. But in any case, in this study, they found that poor sleep made that brainwashing system less effective. And there's a lot of recent research on this too. So other research has found that even one night of sleep deprivation could make it temporarily more difficult for the brain to flush out amyloid B, and this is reversible. So there are a variety of things that we can do to support healthy sleep, and also by supporting healthy sleep, support our brain's brainwashing system and ability to clear those toxins. We talk a lot more about sleep in our Brain Health Bootcamp course. I actually teach the section about sleep. So if you want even more sleep tips or more specific advice, I encourage you to check that out. But here are some initial tips that can make a big difference in sleep quality. I want to let you know that if you struggle with sleep, you're certainly not alone. I do as well. And in fact, over 1 in 3 Americans are sleep deprived, according to a recent poll. Sleep deprivation is actually defined as less than 7 hours of sleep a night regularly. But small changes can make a big difference. Some key things that we recommend would include keeping a regular sleep schedule. This means getting up at around the same time each morning and getting into bed at around the same time each night. Our meal timing, and our program manager, Rachel Sandoval, knows a lot more about this than me, but our meal timing actually really affects our body's rhythm as well. So keeping meal times consistent can help your brain understand when it's time to eat, when it's time to be active, and when it is time to get some rest. Having a kind of standard dinner time most of the time can be helpful, and avoiding large meals and alcohol, especially a couple hours before bed. Temperature can make a really big difference in sleep quality. I've been having some troubles with my air conditioner in my bedroom as it is getting warmer, and so I have been experiencing this firsthand. But keeping your bedroom cool or your sleeping area cool can make a very big difference. I think around 70 degrees is the optimal temperature, but it can be lower for some people, whatever feels most comfortable for you. In addition, keeping it quiet and dark can make a big difference. We continue to process light and sound during sleep, even if we're not aware of it. And if you're in a noisier environment or an environment where there are some bright lights, you may actually be waking up or having your sleep disturbed without noticing. So we recommend trying to keep your area quiet and dark. If this is a challenge, which it can sometimes be, we recommend earplugs. I can put this in the chat, but Rachel and I both really like Max foam earplugs. That's MACK''S. They're very soft and good for sleepwalking. Caffeine can also have a large impact on some people's sleep quality. And one thing some people don't know about caffeine is that it can really stay in the body for a long time. So it has a half-life of about 10 hours. That means that ideally, if you're going to bed at 10 p.m., you might want to actually stop drinking coffee or tea or whatever other caffeinated beverage you're consuming, hopefully not energy drinks, at around noon. Because that will give your body enough time to fully process and get rid of that caffeine. If that sounds insane to you, I totally understand. But if you're having trouble sleeping and enjoy caffeine, maybe try pushing back your caffeine consumption to, say, 3 p.m. instead of 6 p.m. Last but not least, the association that we have between our bed and sleep can make a big difference. So if you are, doing work in bed, if you're on your computer, for example, even if you're reading in bed very, very often, for some people, this can impact your sleep quality. So if you're struggling to sleep, we recommend really dedicating your bed for sleep. Again, these are just some tips, and we go over this in a lot more detail in our Brain Health Bootcamp, but I hope these tips are helpful for supporting your sleep and supporting your brain's waste system. Here's a summary of what we went over today. First of all, like other organs, our brain produces waste. However, sorry about that. Can you all see my screen? I don't know what happened there. We're getting back to the slide.
Yeah, we can see all the slides.
All right.
Just not in presentation mode. There you go.
Excellent. Thanks, Tina. So to summarize, like our other organs, our brain produces waste. But brain waste can't be cleared through typical means because the brain is quite special. It is picky about what it lets in and out, and this is a good thing. This is important for our brain health. So it turns out that our brain has a special waste system that is sometimes called brainwashing. Sometimes it's called the glymphatic system, in which proteins like amyloid and tau are cleared through the cerebrospinal fluid. And sleep, especially slow wave sleep, is essential to this process. So by supporting our sleep quality, we can help our brain clear waste more effectively. And this better waste clearance can contribute to better brain health outcomes. So that's it for our presentation. I hope you found this interesting. I personally think it's quite a neat topic just because that brain waste clearance system is something we have a bit of control over when it comes to sleep hygiene and stuff, and it can really help improve our brain health. So hope you found this interesting. If you'd like to keep learning about lifestyle and brain health and how other factors like nutrition and exercise and physical activity and social engagement and lots more affect our brain, we invite you to join our Brain Health Bootcamp course. This is a 6-week program that covers 6 different lifestyle factors, including sleep. Our next dates for this are still being decided on, but we have a new one that will probably be starting in a couple months. And since you all are subscribed to my Alliance for Brain Health, you'll receive an update when the next Brain Health Bootcamp is available. We also have a Mediterranean diet course. Many of us, for good reason, are really interested in nutrition and how nutrition impacts brain health. Our LEAP program manager, Rachel Sandoval, is a registered dietitian, and she does an amazing job at teaching this 4-week program where each week we explore a different aspect of the Mediterranean diet, how it can help support the body and brain, and how to apply it. So for some examples of that, we talk about balancing blood sugar through healthy eating, and we talk about nutrient density. That refers to getting a lot of vitamins and minerals in all of our meals. So you're more than welcome to join these. Brain Health Bootcamp has a $15 fee per person. That is 15, not 50. And the Mediterranean Diet course has a $10 fee per person, but we are able to waive these fees in cases of financial need. So feel free to reach out to us if that applies to you. Real fast, we have some additional neat resources that you might enjoy on our website. So we have a Simple Steps to a Healthier Brain booklet. This is completely free, and it provides what I think is a very helpful summary of how all of the key lifestyle factors we talk about impact brain health and which specific changes to make in those areas to support your brain. We also have a Brain Healthy Lifestyle Score. This is mostly kind of for fun. This is not a research project, but we have an estimation of how your current habits may be influencing your brain health. So it's a little quiz that you can take online that you can find on our website. Last but not least, we have some standalone webinars coming up. We've covered some interesting topics, and I'd like to just briefly share our next topic after this slide. So a little more information about our course structure, just if you're curious about that Mediterranean Diet course and the Brain Health Bootcamp. Both of our courses feature weekly Zoom classes with tips and research highlights and Q&A, weekly goals and challenges, lots of handouts, and links to helpful resources. And Rachel Sandoval and I teach those courses. All of our classes are recorded for participants to watch later. So if you're interested, but you can't attend the Zoom classes live, you're absolutely welcome to sign up and watch the recordings on your own time. As I previously mentioned, we have a webinar coming up on May 7th about rewiring your brain at any age. I will specifically be talking about neuroplasticity in this presentation, which is your brain's pretty amazing ability to form new connections and even to generate new cells at all stages of life. Researchers kind of used to think that this innate flexibility really only applied to young people, especially to young children, but research is more and more strongly suggesting that we can really rewire our brain at any stage of life, and that this is critical to brain health. So I'll be talking more about neuroplasticity, how it's measured, and how to increase it. We hope you'll join us for that, or for any of our courses. Feel free to head over to kubrainhealth.org/leap to check out any of these programs. All right, thank you so much. Hope you enjoyed this presentation. If you'd like to learn more about LEAP, or if you have any questions about this presentation or about the ADRC in general, feel free to reach out to us at kuadrcleap@kumc.edu. Our program manager is the fantastic Rachel Sandoval, and I am Rosie Pasqualini, the program assistant. Thank you so much. I will check out the chat now.
Thank you, Rosie. Please know that it is the highest compliment when I tell you how well I think I will sleep tonight after hearing your program. So appreciate that. And I hope that's true for everybody. There are several questions in the chat, so if you don't mind taking a look at those, I know that we will all be excited to hear the answers.
All right, so David said, having sleep deprivation makes it hard for the brainwashing to happen, and the brain, sorry, I don't totally understand the end of your sentence there, and the brain builds up this. Does the change in sleep patterns help flush out the buildup? David, would you mind actually elaborating on that? I'm sorry, could you tell me a bit more about your question?
Well, you expressed that there's buildup of the amyloid plaques in your brain if you don't get enough sleep.
Mm-hmm.
If you then change your habits and good sleep habits, does that flush those out that have been building up, or are those? It does do it.
That is a really good question. So I just want to add a little asterisk to your question, which is very good. Those proteins are not necessarily going to build up from lack of sleep. It's just more of a possibility. And so it's thought that that could contribute to cognitive decline in some cases. But, you know, just because you have a few nights of sleep, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have specific buildup. Regarding, does it flush out proteins that have already built up? I would need to look into that a little more, but I believe that the answer is no, which is why, you know, understanding sleep is so important. I think it would be really amazing if it could, and I actually think that's currently a target of certain Alzheimer's therapies. But one reason why some types of decline aren't reversible is because, you know, sleep and currently many other means are not able to get rid of the proteins once they've built up. So that's a great question. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosie.
What about chocolate when you say to limit caffeine use? Another great question. I would say that if you are struggling to sleep and you are eating chocolate late at night, it might make sense to limit the chocolate consumption. It does have a little bit of caffeine, but it's pretty minimal compared to coffee or tea. So if you're specifically having trouble sleeping and you eat chocolate late at night, might be a good idea to cut back on it. But otherwise, I think it wouldn't have a huge effect. But that's a good question.
I'd like to say something about the caffeine one.
Sure.
This Eldine. And I also have the 92. I'm the 92-year-old asking about the span of sleep, because if I get, it's very miracle for me to get 4 hours in at one block, and but the caffeine thing is that it never kept me awake. I didn't think. But it had something to do with the bathroom thing. And I have found now, if I had to quit at noon drinking coffee, I'm just going to die. All right. I'm not going to, I'm going to ignore that one. So now what I am doing is not drinking coffee after about 7 o'clock in the evening, to go to bed 10 to 11. It doesn't keep me awake, but it makes me go to the bathroom a lot. And I have actually really helped my sleep by cutting down on the liquids.
I see.
After 5 o'clock in the evening, I was always drinking water and coffee and all of that all the time, and I probably been about a week, and so just cutting the fluids, and I'm not going to worry about the caffeine because I'm 92. I made it this far, drinking a lot of caffeine, so we'll just scratch that one. But the liquids have helped me with the sleep. But this is so interesting because that I've never ever heard this before. That how that we think of sleep for our physical being, but it explains so much about why we're lethargic and why things we think it's just physical, but our brain needs its sleep too.
Absolutely.
Good.
Yeah, well, thanks for all your thoughts. I think that point about about it waking you up to go to the bathroom sometimes is a very good point, and another good reason to sometimes limit caffeine, because it is a diuretic, as you all may know, which means it makes you pee. But since you're a caffeine enjoyer and I am too, a more positive thing there is that higher caffeine intake to an extent, so about 3 or 4 cups of coffee, is actually linked to improved brain health outcomes. That doesn't necessarily mean that you want to start drinking a bunch of coffee or tea if you haven't already. But if you're already drinking a moderate amount of coffee, it can be good for your brain. So you can just keep that in mind.
Yeah, it's also good for your colon too. Cuts down on colon
cancer. That is very true. I have to agree.
So anyway, I'm a caffeine addict, so I'll stay off for the. But I'm like you. I wouldn't suggest anybody going on a caffeine diet if they're not doing it now.
Especially not a caffeine only diet. That would be bad.
Right.
So you had asked about max sleep time. This is a bit of a challenging question. The standard answer to this is actually that sleep needs don't decrease as we get older. So technically speaking, if you're able to get 7 hours of sleep, whatever age you are, 7 to 9 hours, that is what is recommended. That's not always realistic because as we get older, the brain starts producing less melatonin, which makes it harder to sleep and can sometimes lead to those really early awakenings. So what you're describing is very common. I would say that if it concerns you, maybe speak with a doctor, but otherwise, anecdotally, I've heard many stories of people in a certain stage of life just not sleeping very much and feeling totally fine. So it's kind of a gray area. I hope that kind of answers your question.
Yeah, and the VA doctor has recommended that I do a sleep apnea study.
Yeah.
And that might be for something for anybody here who is listening on this, if they're having a sleep problem that we might not, because I was told that my getting up to go to the bathroom wasn't really a bathroom need. I was actually waking up from sleep apnea.
Interesting.
And so I'm considering a sleep apnea test to find out that I was waking up, and then you're laying there and you think, well, you got to do something. So you go to the bathroom. And so I don't know about anybody that's if they have done the sleep apnea study and whether it's helped them or not.
I actually have, and I'll make sure to move on to some additional questions as well, but I was tested for sleep apnea. I don't have it. I don't know why I'm sharing that with you all. But the point is, it's a very simple test most of the time. It's a little monitor that you wear on your finger that monitors your oxygen overnight. And so, especially if you are experiencing nighttime awakenings, where you are waking up suddenly, that is a really strong sign that you might have sleep apnea, which is where your airway is going to relax a lot during your sleep to the point where it temporarily cuts off your breathing. It sounds very scary, but it's also very treatable. So if you observe that, or if others observe that, then yeah, I would recommend getting tested. It is very treatable. Someone else had asked, do you need less sleep once you get into your 50s or 60s? Another great question related to what Aldine was saying. The answer is technically no. But it is a very well-documented phenomenon. But technically, no, your sleep need stays the same. Then it looks like there's a little more info about the webinar. Yeah, thanks for clarifying that, Kelly G, and thanks for your question, Cheryl. You can head over to kubrainhealth.org/leap. It should be the first listed thing to participate in. It should say rewire your brain, but let us know if you have any trouble finding that, and we'd love to see you there. Okay.
Wow.
I think that was all the questions. I'm happy to stick around a little longer. Oh, it looks like we're at time. So thanks, everybody. The deep sleep question. Yeah, I missed that. Oh man, I would need to look at my sleep chart to find that. So if I am not mistaken, it is typically, if you're getting 7 to 9 hours of sleep, about 1.5 to 2 hours of deep sleep. However, one thing to keep in mind is that how do I put this? If you are, I guess, being diligent about your sleep hygiene and not experiencing sleep disorders, your body is very good at adjusting your different types of sleep that you're getting. So if one night your sleep is interrupted and you get less REM sleep, the next night your body is going to say, we're getting more REM sleep tonight. So typically that specific amount is not something you need to focus on unless, and I'm not totally sure about the accuracy of all of these, but if you have like a sleep tracker and it's regularly saying, oh, you're getting 10 minutes of deep sleep every night, that might be something to check with a doctor with. But overall, your body is very good at adapting so that you're getting the right amount. And yeah, someone mentioned I would encourage anyone who snores to have a sleep test to determine if a CPAP would assist. Yeah, snoring is a sign of that as well sometimes.
Awesome. Rosie, thank you so much for such a helpful webinar. I will get this posted as soon as possible so that anybody is welcome to come back and watch again, and or to let your friends and family know, especially regarding that last comment about snoring. This might be a way to have a conversation with someone who snores, because Rosie and our chatter both said a sleep apnea test are good ideas. Okay, so next week, some of you who were here last week will remember that I said today we would be talking about the nose and the aroma study, and we had to reschedule that. So again, thank you, Rosie, for filling in the gap for us today. And Dr. Vilwalk will be with us next Thursday, May 1st, May Day, to talk about the aroma study. And in this week's My Alliance newsletter, we indicated that the aroma study was looking for people who are not impaired, who do not have a dementia diagnosis. And I want to make a correction that will also be in the next newsletter, that study is actually only looking for people who do have an impairment. And you can read the newsletter next week for more details about that. But come and hear about the aroma study. Come hear what Dr. Vilwalk and her team have learned so far about our sense of smell and what that looks like for brain health. We'll have the link in the next issue of My Alliance. And yes, thank you, Rosie, for answering that question in the chat. Yes, the rewiring webinar, say that 5 times fast. The rewiring webinar will be available to watch if you can't attend live. So if you sign up, you'll get the recording. So no reason to not get that if that's something that you are interested in. All right, folks, thank you so much. Thank you, Rosie. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Have a great week. And next time we see you, it will be the merry month of May. And I hope that means all kinds of good stuff for everybody. All right. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Rosie. Thanks, Rosie. Thanks, Kelly.
You're welcome.